Steelers Nation, hold on to your terrible towels because what just went down at OTAs in Pittsburgh might completely change everything we thought we knew about this team's 2025 season. Aaron Rodgers just made a statement that has the entire NFL world talking, and honestly, if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, you need to fix that right now because we're bringing you every single development from Steelers camp all off-season long. Hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to tell you is only the beginning of what could be the most exciting era of Pittsburgh football we've seen in years. Okay, so let me set the scene for you. Most NFL players during voluntary OTAs roll into the facility around mid-morning, maybe grab some breakfast, ease into the day. It's the off-season, right? Nobody's expecting anyone to go full intensity mode when these practices aren't even mandatory. But Aaron Rodgers apparently didn't get that memo. Or maybe he did, and he just doesn't care. Because the future Hall of Fame quarterback walked into the Steelers practice facility before 7 in the morning, before sunrise, before most of his teammates had even thought about leaving their houses. And right there, in that single moment, Rodgers sent a message louder than any press conference ever could. Think about what that actually means for a second. This is a 42-year-old quarterback who has already achieved everything you can possibly achieve in this league. Multiple MVP awards, a Super Bowl championship, countless records, first ballot Hall of Fame lock. He doesn't need to prove anything to anybody anymore. He could show up whenever he wants, and nobody would really say much about it because of who he is and what he's accomplished. But instead, he's the first one in the building. He's setting the standard before anyone else even has the chance to. And for a Steelers organization that has spent years searching for that franchise quarterback who can truly elevate this roster, that kind of leadership is absolutely invaluable. For months leading up to this moment, there were legitimate questions swirling around Aaron Rodgers and his commitment level. Was he really all in on Pittsburgh? Was this just another stop on a farewell tour? Did he still have that obsessive preparation that made him great? Or had age and the wear of a long career finally caught up to him mentally? Some analysts around the league openly wondered if Rodgers still possessed that killer instinct, that hunger that separates good quarterbacks from elite ones. Well, day one of OTAs just answered those questions in the most emphatic way possible. This wasn't a quarterback going through the motions. This was a man on a mission. And here's what makes this even more significant. Rodgers didn't just show up early and stand around drinking coffee. He was fully engaged from the jump. According to multiple reports coming out of Steelers camp, Rodgers participated in every single drill like he'd been running this offense for 3 seasons already. He was commanding the huddle, making protection calls, adjusting routes at the line of scrimmage, communicating with receivers, connecting with the coaching staff. Everything looked seamless. Everything looked intentional. Everything looked like a quarterback who had been grinding in the film room for weeks before anyone even knew about it. Now compare that to last season when Rodgers first arrived in Pittsburgh during minicamp. The coaching staff was cautious with him back then. They eased him into the system slowly, kept him mostly on the sidelines observing, limited his reps in full team drills. That made sense at the time because he was brand new to the organization and needed time to learn the playbook. But this year, completely different story. Rodgers stepped onto that field as the undisputed QB1 from minute one, and there wasn't a single hesitation in his game. That tells you everything you need to know about how much work he's been putting in behind the scenes during the off-season. And Steelers fans, let me tell you why this matters so much more than just one good practice. When elite veteran quarterbacks start to decline, it almost always begins mentally before it shows up physically. The preparation slips. The film study becomes less obsessive. The extra hours in the facility start disappearing. That's when you know a quarterback is winding down their career. But what we're seeing from Aaron Rodgers right now is the exact opposite. This looks like a player who understands the window is closing and is absolutely determined to maximize every single moment he has left. That mindset is contagious inside a locker room. Young players see that, and it raises their own standards. Veterans see that, and it eliminates any excuse for complacency. This is how championship cultures get built. But while Aaron Rodgers was obviously the main storyline coming out of day one, there was another development that might have flown under the radar for casual fans but is absolutely massive for the future of this franchise. The backup quarterback situation. And trust me, this is way more interesting than it sounds. Most people assumed Mason Rudolph would comfortably settle into the QB2 role without any real competition. He's been with the organization for years, he knows the system, he's started NFL games before. Safe bet, right? Wrong. Because according to reports from practice, it was Will Howard taking reps directly behind Aaron Rodgers as the second-string quarterback, not Mason Rudolph. Let that sink in for a moment. The Steelers are already showing their hand here, and it's a fascinating decision when you really break it down. On one hand, you have Mason Rudolph, a veteran who provides stability and experience. If Aaron Rodgers goes down with an injury, you know exactly what you're getting with Rudolph. He's not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he's also not going to completely implode and lose you games you should win. That's valuable insurance for a team with championship aspirations. But on the other hand, you have Will Howard, a young quarterback with legitimate upside and developmental potential. He's raw, he's unproven at the NFL level, but the physical tools are absolutely there. So why would Pittsburgh give Howard those QB2 reps on day one instead of Rudolph? Simple. Organizations always have to balance present needs with future planning. And if the coaching staff genuinely believes that Will Howard is even remotely close to Mason Rudolph's current ability level, then the smart move is investing in the younger player with higher upside. That's just how modern NFL front offices operate. You don't waste developmental reps on a veteran backup who you already know has a ceiling. You use those reps to accelerate the growth of a young quarterback who might become something special down the line. And here's where things get really uncomfortable for Mason Rudolph. If Will Howard continues progressing throughout training camp and preseason games, there's a very real possibility that the Steelers eventually decide Rudolph is expendable. I know that sounds harsh, and I'm sure Mason Rudolph is a great guy who has done everything the organization has asked of him over the years. But this is professional football, and roster spots are precious. NFL teams don't keep 3 quarterbacks unless the third one has legitimate trade value or special teams contributions. So if Howard keeps developing and earns that QB2 spot, Rudolph could find himself on the outside looking in when final cuts happen. Now, obviously, this competition is far from over. We're talking about day one of voluntary OTAs here. Mason Rudolph still has months to prove his value and remind the coaching staff why experience matters in emergency situations. But make no mistake, the fact that Will Howard got those second-string reps immediately is not some random decision. Coaches don't accidentally hand out depth chart positioning during OTAs. Every single rep is calculated and intentional. And if Pittsburgh truly sees something special in Howard, this QB2 battle could become one of the most important storylines to watch all summer long. All right, now let's shift gears and talk about something that might not generate the same headlines as Aaron Rodgers or the quarterback competition, but could honestly end up being even more critical to this team's success: the offensive line. Because the Steelers made some serious changes to their front five during day one of OTAs, and these moves tell you exactly what the coaching staff is prioritizing heading into next season: protecting Aaron Rodgers. If Pittsburgh wants any chance of competing for a championship, the offensive line absolutely must take a massive leap forward from where it was last year. The biggest development along the offensive line involves Troy Fautanu. The Steelers have fully committed to developing him as their franchise left tackle. And when I say fully committed, I mean he's already getting first-team reps on the blind side, which is a huge vote of confidence from the organization. Left tackle is arguably the second most important position on the entire offense behind quarterback. You're responsible for protecting the quarterback's blind side against the most dangerous pass rushers in football every single week. That's an enormous responsibility, especially for a young player still learning the NFL game. But Pittsburgh clearly believes Fautanu is ready for that challenge. This decision creates some fascinating ripple effects across the rest of the offensive line. Dylan Cook shifted over to right tackle and got most of the first-team reps there during practice. Mason McCormick, who played right guard last season, moved back over to left guard where he originally played in college. Spencer Anderson stepped in at right guard with the starting unit. And suddenly what looked like a relatively stable offensive line a few months ago now feels like it's in complete flux with multiple position battles happening simultaneously. But here's the thing, Steelers fans. That competition might be exactly what this team needs. Great offensive lines aren't built through comfort and complacency. They're forged through competition and accountability. Coaches want players battling for jobs every single day in practice. They want intensity. They want urgency. And right now, there are at least 2 or 3 starting spots along this offensive line that are still completely up for grabs. That creates an environment where nobody can relax. And honestly, that's when players develop the fastest. Let's talk specifically about Troy Fautanu for a second because this is genuinely one of the most important storylines for Pittsburgh's entire season. The Steelers drafted him believing he could eventually become a cornerstone franchise tackle, someone they could build around for the next decade. And based on how they're using him in OTAs, it's clear the organization doesn't want to wait around for that development anymore. They want him protecting Aaron Rodgers' blindside immediately. That's a bold move, because even though Fautanu has incredible physical tools and talent, left tackle is one of the hardest positions to play in all of football, especially for young players. Every single week, you're going up against elite edge rushers who have spent years mastering their craft. Guys like Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons. These are absolute game wreckers who can single-handedly destroy an offense if the left tackle can't handle them. So, throwing a young player into that fire requires serious confidence from the coaching staff. But Pittsburgh seems ready to trust Fautanu with that responsibility, and honestly, that belief from the organization speaks volumes about how highly they view his potential. Meanwhile, the right tackle competition is heating up in a big way. Dylan Cook got the majority of first-team reps during day 1, but it's not like he has the job locked down. Broderick Jones is still working his way back physically and could absolutely enter this competition once he's fully healthy. And don't sleep on some of the other developmental tackles on the roster either. The coaching staff is going to spend all of training camp evaluating every possible combination along that offensive line, trying to find the perfect 5-man unit that gives Aaron Rodgers the best chance to succeed. And then there's the guard situation, which might quietly be the most wide-open competition of all. Mason McCormick moving back to left guard makes a ton of sense when you think about continuity and chemistry. The coaching staff clearly wants to build cohesion between McCormick, Fautanu, and center Zach Frazier on the left side of the line. Those relationships matter more than casual fans sometimes realize. Communication, timing, trust, understanding each other's tendencies, all of that gets developed through reps together, and Pittsburgh is trying to accelerate that process as much as possible. But that move opens up a massive battle at right guard. Spencer Anderson, Brock Hoffman, and rookie Zion Dunlap are all competing for that starting spot, and honestly, this could become one of the most underrated storylines of the entire offseason. Because if Dunlap develops quickly and shows he's ready to contribute immediately, Pittsburgh could suddenly have another young foundational piece to build around. But if he's not quite ready yet, then veterans like Anderson or Hoffman could step in and provide stability while the rookie continues developing. Either way, the urgency around these offensive line competitions tells you everything you need to know about where this organization is mentally right now. The Steelers understand that the window to compete with Aaron Rodgers is not 2 or 3 years down the road. It's right now, this season, which means every single roster battle suddenly carries extra weight because there's no time to waste on developing players who aren't ready to contribute immediately. All right, so here's my question for Steelers Nation, and I want you to comment below with your honest opinion. Who should win that starting right guard job? Do you trust Spencer Anderson's experience? Do you think Brock Hoffman deserves a shot? Or should Pittsburgh just throw rookie Zion Dunlap into the fire and let him learn on the job? Let me know in the comments because I guarantee Steelers fans are going to be debating this one all summer long. Now, while most of the attention from day one of OTAs focused on quarterbacks and offensive linemen, there was another development happening quietly at wide receiver that could end up being really important for this offense. Roman Wilson officially opened OTAs as the starting slot receiver, and honestly, this might finally be the role that unlocks his full potential. Because if we're being real, last season never really clicked for Wilson. The previous offensive system tried using him more heavily on the outside, and it just didn't consistently work. His skill set has always screamed slot receiver. Quickness, short area explosiveness, route running precision, the ability to create separation in tight windows. That's where he thrives. And now it finally looks like the Steelers are putting him in a position that actually fits his strengths. That matters more than people think because too many talented young receivers fail in this league simply because teams misuse them early in their careers. You draft a guy, force him into a role that doesn't match his skill set, he struggles, confidence drops, and suddenly a player who should have been productive never reaches his potential. But now, with Wilson operating naturally inside as the slot receiver, there's a real opportunity for him to become a consistent contributor in this offense. At the same time, though, Wilson isn't operating in a vacuum. There's competition breathing down his neck. Jeremy Bernard is already creating serious buzz inside the Steelers' facility, and multiple players have reportedly been impressed with how quickly he's picking up the offense. That's a very encouraging sign for Pittsburgh because one thing this offense desperately needs is legitimate receiver depth. Defenses are obviously going to focus their best coverage on the top weapons. Somebody else has to consistently emerge as a reliable target, especially on third downs and in the red zone. Could that be Roman Wilson finally putting everything together? Could it become Jeremy Bernard stepping up as a rookie? Could both players carve out important roles and give Aaron Rodgers more weapons than people expect? That competition suddenly feels very real, and Steelers fans should honestly be excited about it because internal competition at receiver almost always creates better overall production across the entire position group. And here's a small detail that might not mean much on the surface, but could actually be significant. Roman Wilson changed his jersey number. He's now wearing number 14 instead of number 10. And I know some people roll their eyes at stuff like that, but athletes genuinely care about fresh starts and mental resets. Confidence matters in professional sports. Comfort matters. Sometimes something as simple as a new number can symbolize a completely different chapter of a player's career. And if Wilson finally settles into that slot role permanently and starts producing consistently, maybe we look back at this jersey change as the moment everything clicked for him. All right, now let's talk about the defense because this might actually be the most important long-term storyline coming out of day one. The Steelers have a new defensive coordinator in Patrick Graham, and according to multiple defensive players, he's already making a massive impression inside the locker room. And the message he's bringing sounds exactly like what Steelers fans have been desperate to hear: intensity, accountability, dominance. That's the standard he's setting, and honestly, this is where things could get really interesting for Pittsburgh this season. Because let's be real, talent has never been the issue for this Steelers defense. They have playmakers, they have stars, they have athleticism at every level. The real question has always been whether the coaching and scheme could maximize that talent consistently, especially against elite offenses in big games. Patrick Graham clearly believes it can, and apparently he's already challenging this defense to embrace that legendary steel curtain mentality that defined championship Steelers teams for decades. Now, obviously, nobody should casually throw around comparisons to those legendary defenses from the 70s and 2000s. Those units earned that reputation through years of sustained dominance and multiple championships. But you know what? At least Patrick Graham understands the standard. He's not lowering expectations. He's not preaching mediocrity. He's not talking about just being respectable. He wants dominance. And honestly, that mentality and mindset matters more than people realize. Great defenses almost always reflect the personality of their coordinator. If Graham successfully builds confidence, aggression, and accountability into this unit, Pittsburgh could become extremely dangerous on that side of the ball. Because when you actually look at the talent they already have, it's pretty remarkable. Elite pass rushers who can wreck game plans, athletic linebackers who can cover ground sideline to sideline, playmakers in the secondary who can create turnovers, veteran leadership that understands what it takes to win in January. On paper, this defense absolutely has the potential to become a top 5 unit in the entire NFL. But potential means absolutely nothing without execution. That's where Patrick Graham comes in, and Steelers fans should feel genuinely encouraged hearing how positively players are already responding to his coaching style this early in the process. Because chemistry between coordinators and players can completely transform a season. When players buy into the system and trust the coaching, that's when special things start happening on the field. So here's the biggest question of all, and this is what everything ultimately comes down to. Can this Steelers defense actually become a top 3 unit in football this year? Because honestly, they might need to be if Pittsburgh truly wants to compete for a Super Bowl. If Aaron Rodgers is going to lead this team deep into the playoffs, the defense has to consistently carry its weight against the elite offenses they'll face. There's no shortcut around that reality. And after day 1 of OTAs, it genuinely feels like this entire organization understands the urgency of the moment. Aaron Rodgers looks completely locked in and prepared. Young players are battling for meaningful roles. The offensive line is being completely reshaped to maximize protection. Receivers are competing for opportunities. The defense is embracing a new identity under fresh leadership. This doesn't feel like a team sleepwalking into another mediocre season where they barely sneak into the playoffs and get bounced in the wild card round. This feels like a franchise trying to maximize one final championship window while they still have an elite quarterback capable of carrying them. And Steelers fans can absolutely feel that energy building already, even though we're still months away from the regular season. Because whether people want to admit it or not, when Aaron Rodgers fully commits to football at this level, expectations immediately change for everyone around him. The excuses disappear, the pressure intensifies, and now Pittsburgh has to prove they can turn all of this potential and talent into actual wins when September arrives. And after just one day of OTAs, one thing already feels crystal clear. The Steelers are not planning to play it safe this year. They're going all in, and it's going to be an absolutely wild ride. So make sure you're subscribed because we're going to be covering every single development from Steelers camp all off-season long. Drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway from day 1, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's go, Steelers!